Hi guys, I'm Alexandra from Mason Lifestyle. Today we are going to be doing a sew along for butter egg 58 or 6858. I told you guys in my plans video about a week or so ago that I was going to do the dress, and I did. I did it this past weekend, but I liked this dress so much that I thought it will be looking great as a top too. So I'm going to be doing the top with the same neckline as the dress, because that is the tricky part on this pattern. But without further ado, let's get started. All right, guys, as I mentioned on the intro part, we are going to be doing butter egg 6858. And I actually already did the dress. It's awesome, but I'm going to make it now as a top, and I'm going to be doing that color since it's a little bit of a tricky bit, but I'm not going to be doing that front pocket. I just don't think I like that for myself. But let me show you the pieces that you're going to need. You're going to need pattern piece number 1, and this is the front, and cut 1 on the fold. You're also going to need pattern piece number 2. This is the side front, and you're going to cut 2. You're also going to need pattern piece number 4, and this is the back, and you're going to cut 2. You are also going to need pattern piece number 5, and this is a color, and you're going to cut 2. And if you tell yourself, I don't do notches or dots or triangles or any of that for this pattern piece, you want to make sure you mark those and that you put your notches in the pattern. They are really important, so don't skip that. If you skip it everywhere else because you've been sewing forever, go right ahead, but not on this one. So make sure you put all those knots, dots, and notches in there. And you're also going to need pattern piece number 7, which is a sleeve, and cut 2. All right, guys, let's get started. All right, guys, so this is pattern piece number 1. And first things first is the pattern. It's asking us to stay stitch. So a straight stitch, and you have a notch almost towards the middle of the pattern piece, towards the notch all the way to the end. So make sure you do that. And if you're wondering what the heck is stay stitching, I'm going to go ahead and link a video that I have, what is each stitch, that I call when I do my my sew alongs. So they want you to stitch both on the right and on the left side. And we're stay stitching because we are going to be attaching piece number 2, which is the side front, and it's a curves, and we don't want that to stretch. And also it's asking you to stay stitch by the neckline, and grab your scissors and clip towards that circle without cutting your stitches. So go ahead and do that for piece 1. All right, guys, this is pattern piece number 2, and you have 2 notches. You have one right here, and then you have another notch right there. I want you to pin and make sure that you match those notches. You're going to have a little bit of extra fabric at the end. Don't worry about that. Just make sure that your notches match. And once you do that, I want you to stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance. Don't forget to backstitch at the start and at the end. And of course, we are working with knits, so make sure that you use a narrow zigzag stitch on your machine. Go ahead and do that for both left and right side. Again, this is pattern piece number 1, and this is pattern piece number 2. Go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, so we went ahead and stitched piece 1 to piece 2, and you are going to see that at the curve, almost by the hip, your fabric is not laying flat. So go ahead and turn that over, and you want to remember to clip, right? Clip into those curves. Again, make sure that you do not go past your stitches, but that you get pretty close. So once you do that, it starts laying flat. So go ahead and do that, and then I want you to finish your raw edge. If you have a serger, if you don't, you can always do a zigzag stitch. And I want you to press that seam allowance towards the center. And once you do that, I want you to top stitch 1/4 of an inch away from that seam that we just made. So go ahead and do that for both left and right side. Go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, so we are top stitching 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. And if you don't have a presser foot for top stitching or edge stitching, just use your regular foot and just keep it aligned with that seam that we just made. Remember, make sure that your seam allowance is going towards the center of the bodice piece. All right, guys, so this is how my front piece looks. I did my top stitching, and you can do straight stitch. If you do straight stitch, just make sure that you have a longer stitch, or you can also do zigzag stitch, or you can also use your double needle and just have a really nice double needle top stitching. But once you're done with that, put it off to the side, and you're going to grab both pieces number 4, and I want you to pin, and you have a triple notch. Make sure you line your pieces up, and again, I want you to stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and at the end. Then I want you to trim your seam allowance, and then you press it off to the side. Go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, now that you stitched your back pieces together, I want you to grab your front and your back, and I want you to, as always, find the notches at the shoulders, pin, and also want you to pin the sides. 2 notches right here. All right, guys, so go ahead and pin both sides and at the shoulders, and I want you to stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and at the end. And again, do that for the right and left side for both shoulders and the side. Go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, so we attach the front to the back, and I am using a kind of like almost like a heavier knit. It's an athletic knit, but if you are using something else, I would definitely reinforce the shoulders. It could be with stay tape, or usually what I do is I just use some ribbon. That's what I did for my other dress using this pattern. But once you're done with that, put it off to the side. And I want you to grab your collar pieces, and I want you to do 2 rows of gathering stitches like I've done. And if you look at the pattern piece, they want you to do gathering stitches on both sides from the fold line all the way down. So go ahead and do that now for both collar pieces number 5. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so I got my gathering stitches done. Now I want you to go ahead and, in my case, I have some double satin ribbon, and the pattern is calling for seam binding. I have none at home, but this is what you want to do. You want to grab your seam gauge and you want to cut 3.5 or 9 centimeters piece of seam binding or ribbon, whatever you have, okay? And they are asking you to put it from the fold line and to stop at this at your seam line, which is going to be 5/8 or 1.5 centimeters. But the way you're going to do that is you are going to adjust your gathers. And you're going to do this on the wrong side, which I have to turn mine over. But again, then as always, adjust your gathers. So, again, I'm doing this on the wrong side. So I'm almost right there. Pull a little more. And then my seam line is right there. Grab your pins. There's one. And make sure that this is straight. Now that you have it like this, I want you to do that for both sides. Again, it's gonna be on the wrong side of the fabric from the fold line into your seam line, right? Which is, grab your seam gauge, 5/8. That's when you know that you are stopping in the right, in the correct location. So go ahead now and baste this seam binding, or in my case, this ribbon. And what you want to do is you want to create this this stay for your collar, because you want the part in the back to just stay up. So go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, so this is how our collar looks. That's the right side. This is the wrong side, right? And you could probably cut all these loose strings from the gathering stitches, and now with right sides together, Hold on, let me cut these. You have 3 notches. So again, you want to line up your notches. Okay guys, now I want you to stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and at the end. Go ahead and do that now. For piece number 5, you are stitching both of them together. All right guys, so I went ahead and attached my 2 pieces for the collar. That's how it looks. This is how it looks from the right side, right? I went ahead and pressed it, but now you want to fold the pieces, and you have a notch right there. So just for now, just pin on both sides and pin. So now I want you to grab those gathers and I want you to pull. And what you're trying to do is to get all those gathers in this spot. So keep pulling on those gathering threads. Okay. So you want to, there is another notch on this side. So you want to make sure that that matches right there. I have to pull a little more on the side. Okay, so that's what this is going to look like. Make sure you match here. And you can baste this if you want to, just so it does not move on you. Right? But again, right, and you have that fold line right there. And you want to match that notch right there. So keep gathering your stitches until that notch matches. Right? Mine is right there. So I'm going to do it on the other side again. See how I like that? again, my notch is right there. Told you guys my fabric is a little bit thicker, so it's, and I want it that way. And there's the full line and pin. So I suggest you baste, right? Because your collar is gonna go, actually your collar is gonna go like this. And you want this side towards the back of your neck. So that's how it's gonna go. And this part is gonna go towards the back. So again, go ahead and baste, right? Baste all the way down, just so you are not moving those gathers. So go ahead and gather your collar piece and go ahead and baste it. Once we do that, I'm going to show you how to attach it to the bodice. All right, guys, now that we have our collar ready, you're going to do this with right sides together. And I usually like to start at the back, center back. So pin, and you have these triangles on your pattern pieces. That means your shoulder seam. You may have to stretch it to get there or not, but make sure that that matches on both sides. And then you have this notches at the front, and you have notch on this side. Right? And remember, we're trying to get this like this, okay? So you definitely want to match that notch. And then you also have, remember over here we have that we clipped. You have the notch. So remember when I started, I said, make sure that if you don't put notches on any other pattern pieces that you do for your collar piece. Right? So that's one side, how it's gonna look. So again, keep going. Pin. Again, my notch. And I have the other notch right here. So it's a little bit tricky, but again, if you follow the notches, you'll get it, right? And again, that's how your collar is going to look. Okay, so once you have that done, I want you to stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance all the way around. Put another pin here. And take your time because you don't want any puckers, right? This is going to be your color, so you want it to look good. So again, go ahead and stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance. Take your time. Don't go in a rush. And if you have any puckers, just go ahead and take them out. Take perhaps maybe like an inch out on both sides and then just ease it in. But go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, so I went ahead and stitched the collar in. And if you get any puckers around the way, just go ahead and unpick about 1/2 inch to 1/2 inch, maybe to 1 inch. And then just go ahead and ease it in. But that's how mine turned out. I just tried it on. I love where this is going. So now the pattern's asking you to go ahead and top stitch around the neck edge. I'm not going to do that this time around because I like the way it looks, but I am going to go ahead and finish the inside, and I may have to go ahead and then top stitch. But once you're done with that, go ahead and put that off to the side. And then I want you to grab your sleeves. And again, with right sides together, go ahead and find your notches, pin, and go ahead and stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and at the end. The pattern's also asking us to do some gathering stitches. I usually ease in my sleeves for knits a different way, so go ahead and do that for both sleeves. So again, 5/8 inch seam allowance. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and at the end. All right, guys, so we went ahead and stitched our sleeves. So now we're going to attach those. And I usually like to start at the seam under the arm, pin, and you have these notches. So here's one. You have another notch in the back. That's usually 2 notches. Pin. I'm going to get this from the inside. You also have a center dot. That means the shoulder seam. You will see that, here we go, our sleeve is larger. So for knits, only for knits, I like to do these small cuts. All right, guys, so now I want you to stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance all the way around. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and at the end, and do that for both sleeves. All right, guys, now that you set in the sleeves, so go ahead and do your hem at the sleeve and also do your hem at the bottom, and you are all done. All right, guys, I hope you like that sew along. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. As always, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next week. Bye.